Once we start this video, you may think you've missed a video or something, but I'm here to placate all your agitation and assure you that you have indeed not suffered a lapse in logic or continuity. I have suffered a lapse in logic and continuity. Let's finish some Scatterbrain, shall we? And get it on the table. Greetings, good humans, and welcome to Tabletop Alchemy, where sometimes we actually finish some tabletop Scatterbrain, and we thank our patrons for supporting my personal affinity for moss.
Oh, fool!
I mean, the flock. You know, the flocking kind of moss. Moss flock. Actually, my affinity might just be for flock in general. Basically anything you could sprinkle on top of watered down PVA. Because flocking fixes everything, man. Come on. I need some flock to, cover my life choices. Anywho, we're starting today with some speed painted scatter terrain pieces. These are rubble and rubbish scatter bits, and I neglected to record my quickie painting of these little displays of incredible art. Mostly I neglected to record the painting because I ended up just slapping paints on over at the crafting table using some cheap, you know, the Americana brand or folk art brand craft paints from Michaels, and I just literally slapped down some base coats of gray and brown and then dry brushed with the same stuff in lighter gray and lighter brown, otherwise known as tan for you art aficionados out there. But then I brought the pieces over to the painting desk where the camera is set up and ready to go, so that's why I recorded the stuff that's coming up now. It's ready for flocking and foliage and tufts even. But the first thing I did was I actually went ahead and painted some metallic onto these barrel bands, because not doing that was somehow bothering me, even though, you know, I have this super low quality bar for general scatter terrain. I just felt I needed to touch these up a little bit with some metallics, so just a quick pass with the Vallejo stuff, and then we're on to the washes. Now, in my box of craft paints, I found some of these old, out-of-production secret weapon washes that I don't use these very much. I mean, that's why they're in my craft paint box. I thought I would try some out here, and so I put a little bit on the palette. Well, all right, so there's a whole bunch on the palette now, so whatever. And yeah, again, after putting some on here, I just came to that same realization I always come to with these particular washes. I don't know why I don't just throw them out. You know, but they might be good for something in the future. Paints usually are in some way always usable. But anyway, I just pulled out some of the bottles of old Games Workshop standard washes I had laying around, and I decided to go to town with those instead. And I hit all the wooden crates and barrels with good old Agrax Earthshade, and I figured I'd just keep the brown wash to those items, and then I popped open the Nuln Oil and the Camo Shade to start mixing things up. Initially, I kept the Nuln Oil to these sort of stone beams or whatever these chunks of rubble are, but like I always seem to do, I just started mixing in the Camo Shade pretty liberally across different spots. I just really like the Camo Shade wash color. It's sort of just a greenish brown, like an olive drab. Essentially, the mission here was just to cover the entirety of each scatter piece with some kind of wash in every spot. Now, this is super fast, super easy. You know, we all know that. Washes were invented for me so that I could just have fun doing tabletop hobby stuff, right? Come on. You know you love speed painting with washes as much as I do. And now we get to do some mother flocking. Yes, I said mother flocking. Get your ears out of the gutter. So I first started with this sort of pull apart bushy stuff from the Woodland Scenics All Game Terrain brand, and I haven't worked with this stuff too much yet, but I liked it when I first tested it, so I bought a couple extra packages, and now it's, you know, it's finally getting some use. And then I have this sponge of like brown ivy stuff from AK Interactive that at first when I used it, I didn't find it super great because it's literally like a 1/2 inch thick slab of sponge with little leaves stuck to it. But I found here that wedging it into some of the smaller spaces created by the larger chunks of foam, terrain rubble bits, actually made it work pretty good. I ended up using some super glue to make it stick faster so I could lock it in place, and then I just hit this little spot right here with some of the crumbs from that all game terrain bushy stuff. You know, speed crafting terrain is great for recycling all the crap that lands on the crafting bench. You know, all the excess flock. Just scoop it all up, throw it on some white glue. Done. I found another container in the flock box that had a bunch of scrap pieces from the Woodland Scenics seafoam tree foliage stuff. So I figured I'd just jam some of that in there, and I'm just using watered down PVA glue mostly for all this stuff. And then I found a container of Woodland Scenics sort of medium coarse flock, which is, I guess now I'm looking at it, it's like basically the same stuff they used for that sort of stretchy, bushy stuff. It's just in a loose format here. And then it's time for some of my favorite super simple mossy moss, where I just put some watery glue down and sprinkle on the fine flock in standard green color. It's very one note color wise, but because it's bright, the contrast just sort of helps the whole piece stand out on the table a little bit with these, pops of green color. And I just love putting moss on big flat surfaces. It breaks up the surfaces. It's super easy. It looks like something out of the Last of Us games, which I love too, so I can't get enough of it. Now I wanted to add some flocking to the flat ground areas on these bases, so I mixed up a more brownish green mix of flock and added some coarse like red sand I had to it. Like, it's not even sand, it's sort of like little tiny pebbles. And I just went to town putting this kind of everywhere. I'm just gunning more glue on there and more flock and then more glue on top of it. And I want these Scatterbrain pieces to be pretty hardy in the long run so that, miniatures and basic tabletop play with savages doesn't, leave a bunch of crumbs everywhere on the table. The only crumbs on the table allowed are Dorito crumbs, right? We're doing everything with a mindset towards sealing these things all up. Now, a little more moss on top of the barrels and any other spots that seem too boring, I guess. I don't know. I just like throwing this flock around. I already said that. Come on. Now, then I got some of the taller tufts that I don't use too much on miniature bases and just put a couple of these down here and there. I didn't go crazy with the tufts on these particular pieces. I mean, tufts are kind of expensive to use in volume on big chunks of terrain. So, I just added more moss with the fine green flock because it goes a long way and is super affordable. Now, in the last video, I did make 2 large chunks of flat, rough terrain, and I did go ahead and add a few tufts to these because they are so flat and featureless. But of course, these bases are intended for miniatures to traverse just with using like the game rules for rough terrain. So I still wanted to keep them like fairly low profile as far as the detail on the vertical detail goes. And the last pass I did on these pieces was an ultra matte varnish because some of the washes dry a little bit glossy and any of the initial Mod Podge coat that didn't get hidden by paint also remains glossy. This ultra matte is by far my favorite matte varnish. I mean, it dries like literally matte. It's the most matte finish I've seen out of a matte varnish. And I just doused everything, even soaking some of it into the flock to seal up any, missed loose bits and crumbs, those crumbs I was talking about. There might even be some Dorito crumbs on these pieces. We'll never know. And there we have 4 pieces of rubble and rubbish Scatterbrain that all came together pretty quickly in the actual, time spent category. I think they came out pretty nice for very quick slapdash terrain work. I mean, obviously I had the crates and barrels were all 3D printed, so those were easy to stick on a piece of foam. And but that's, what I'm all about, making stuff as easy as possible. But yeah, I think they'll offer miniatures, decent cover or line of sight blocking. They'll look all right on the table. And I have the 2 low sections of rough terrain as well. I think it's all going to be great. So, go flock something, because it's fun. See ya.